So you did get married.
Yes,
You have 2 kids.
2 precious babies.
And you told me this in private, but how many kids did you guys want to have?
We wanted to have 4.
The following investigation dissects the structural inconsistencies in the public narrative surrounding Erika Kirk's motherhood and the timeline of her pregnancies. For a public figure whose life has been meticulously documented since her days in the pageant circuit, the sudden and total absence of primary evidence during her most significant personal milestones has moved from a matter of privacy to a matter of deep investigative concern. In the digital age, a total absence of evidence is often more telling than a surplus of it. Erika Kirk has spent the better part of a decade in front of a lens, first as a Miss Michigan contestant, then as a high-profile influencer, and finally as the wife of the most prominent youth political leader in America. Yet, a forensic sweep of the years 2022 through 2024 reveals a statistical anomaly. There is not a single unmanaged, candid, or public photograph of Erika Kirk in a state of visible pregnancy. Public figures often retreat for privacy, but they rarely vanish entirely from the visual record for 9 months. The privacy defense used by the TPUSA leadership camp is fundamentally at odds with the organization's operational model. TPUSA functions as a 24/7 content machine. Every aspect of the Kirks' lives was leveraged to promote the traditional family brand. To suggest that the very evidence needed to validate that brand, the physical journey of motherhood, was hidden for enjoyment contradicts the aggressive media blitz Erika embarked upon immediately following the events of September 2025. One does not hide a pregnancy for peace and then pivot to a national media tour during a period of traumatic grief unless the narrative is being constructed in real time. When public skepticism regarding the pregnancy reached a fever pitch, the Kirk camp released an ultrasound image intended to silence the questioning voices. However, the document provided only deepened the mystery. The medical header on the ultrasound identifies the patient as Erika Franchak. This presents a massive administrative red flag. By the time of the alleged pregnancy, Erika had been legally married to Charlie Kirk for years. In the American healthcare system, medical records are tied to legal identification and insurance providers. It is highly irregular for a major medical facility to process a high-profile patient under a maiden name that had been legally retired. Internal leaks from the unreleased film project November Renaissance show that Erika was using Erika Kirk for professional credits during this same period. Why would she use her married name for a movie but her maiden name for a medical procedure? This discrepancy suggests the possibility of a borrowed medical record, using an older file or a file belonging to a relative to simulate a timeline that doesn't physically exist in the public record. The children themselves remain the most shielded assets in the TPUSA showroom. While many parents choose to keep their children off social media, the Kirk strategy is distinct. The children are frequently used as props to signal maternal status, yet their faces are consistently obscured, blurred, or filmed from behind. This level of control prevents any independent verification of the children's development. In the world of investigative commentary, we look for growth markers and the natural progression of an infant into a toddler. However, viral side-by-side comparisons of photos released by Erika show significant developmental glitches. In one instance, a photo shared as a newborn appears to show an infant with physical markers, neck strength and eye focus, that suggest a much older child. In another, a photo shared months later shows a child that appears younger than the previous post. This shuffled timeline suggests that the photos being shared are not a chronological record of 2 children, but a curated library of images used to fill a narrative void. When combined with the fact that their full legal names have never been disclosed, not even in accidental slips during hours of live-streamed content, it points to a level of secrecy that is historically associated with managed identities rather than standard privacy. One cannot discuss the inconsistencies in Erika Kirk's motherhood story without addressing the Romania connection. For years, Erika has been publicly tied to charitable work involving an orphanage in Romania. While this is presented as a humanitarian effort, the lack of pregnancy evidence in the U.S. has led many to look toward this pipeline as a possible origin for the Kirk children. The megachurch Romania pipeline involves a network of international shelters and religious organizations. In the absence of a documented physical pregnancy, the theory of private adoption or surrogacy would usually be the logical conclusion. However, the Kirk narrative insists on a traditional biological birth. By insisting on a narrative that has no physical evidence, they have forced the public to look for alternatives. The connection to Romanian institutions, which have historically been involved in complex international adoption webs, provides a plausible infrastructure for a managed family expansion that avoids the medical paper trail of a domestic birth. The reason the public is unwilling to take Erika Kirk at her word is her documented history of showroom lies. First, the chaste narrative. She claimed 5 years of single, devout life in New York, yet social media receipts and archives proved relationships with athletes like Josh Harrelson and media figures during that exact window. Second, the non-drinker claim. She publicly stated she has never consumed alcohol, but video footage from multiple events directly contradicts this. Finally, the alibi metadata. Her team released a photo to prove her location on September 8, yet the metadata showed the photo was taken on September 9, the day before the UVU assassination. When a public figure is caught in strategic lies regarding their personal history and their whereabouts during a crime, their claims regarding motherhood can no longer be accepted as default truth. The core of the skepticism is not based on hating a widow. It is based on a forensic analysis of a woman who has spent her life treating her identity as a project to be edited rather than a truth to be told. The primary victims in this mind war of perception are the children themselves. If the motherhood narrative is indeed a managed production, these children are being raised in an environment where their very identities are secondary to the requirements of the TPUSA brand. As the head of a multi-million-dollar organization, Erika Kirk's schedule is physically incompatible with the hands-on parenting she performs for the cameras. The investigation continues because the inconsistencies are not fading, they are multiplying. From the Fronczak ultrasound to the metadata failures, the story of Erika Kirk's motherhood is the final pillar of a narrative that is currently under total collapse. The logic of the transition from private citizen to public icon usually demands a degree of transparency that Erika has systematically avoided. In the 2026 landscape, where deepfake technology and AI-generated content are rampant, the demand for physical, verifiable proof has never been higher. Yet, every piece of proof released by the Kirk camp contains an error that invites further scrutiny. If the goal was to protect the children, the most effective method would be to remove them from the public eye entirely. Instead, they are used as shields against political criticism. Whenever an investigator asks a difficult question about TPUSA's finances or Erika's associations, a new, blurred photo of a motherly moment is released. This weaponization of motherhood is a classic psychological warfare tactic. It creates an emotional barrier that makes the questioner look heartless for seeking the truth. But as we peel back the layers of the Romania pipeline and the Fronczak medical records, it becomes clear that the truth is the only thing that can truly protect the integrity of the movement. The timeline of Erika's rise to CEO also mirrors the timeline of these familial changes. The rapid succession of power, the introduction of a new father figure who was a childhood friend of Charlie's, and the shifting narratives about her past all point to a singular goal: the preservation of the TPUSA infrastructure at all costs. The Mind War, paper by Valli and Aquino, argues that the mind must be convinced of a reality before it can be controlled. By presenting a perfect, albeit unverifiable, image of motherhood, Erika is attempting to convince the base that she is the rightful heir to the conservative mantle. But the base is waking up. They are looking at the metadata. They are looking at the maiden names on medical files, and they are realizing that the showroom floor is beginning to give way. The children, if they are indeed the biological offspring of Charlie and Erika, deserve a history that isn't shrouded in metadata errors and maiden name mysteries. If they are not, they deserve a truth that acknowledges their actual origins rather than using them as props in a political mind war. As the investigation into Fort Huachuca and the events of September 2025 deepens, the motherhood narrative remains the most sensitive, yet most inconsistent part of the puzzle. We will continue to track the flight logs, the medical filings, and the digital footprints left behind by a camp that is increasingly desperate to keep the showroom lights on.